a reason why they should care about their technique. For me, it's usually injury prevention that will get a dancer on board. I don't think you do have to make things when you're not inspired to do so, unless if you're wanting to do choreography or you're wanting to get started. I think being inspired to do something and then step one, like action step one, go to the studio, wiggle it out.
Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Steps, produced by Apollo Performance and Turning Point Dance Creations. I am Melissa McDaniel Grisham, here with Bree Zabrowski, with another fantastic episode lined up. We're excited to welcome our friend and repeat guest, Emily Buffer, to talk about the art of dance education and choreography. There is a lot to unpack here, and there's much, much more than people can see on the surface, so if it's being done well, that is. So, on faculty at New York City's Broadway Dance Center and Steps on Broadway, Emily is the producer of the Young Choreographers Festival in New York City, presenting the future of dance, and a sought-after educator around the U.S. and abroad. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you so much. I'm always so happy to be here with both of you.
We love talking to you and welcome back to Beyond the Steps. You have an extensive background in both choreography and dance education. I have said you're one of my favorite dance educators that I've ever seen teach or work with and work with. You are just incredibly kind and compassionate and nurturing, and you know so much, and you just pour yourself into your classes and your students, which I just think is such a gift that we don't see enough of sometimes. But it gives you a really unique perspective on nurturing dancers and movement. So, what are some of the most rewarding aspects of guiding dancers in both learning and creative exploration?
There are so many wonderful parts of guiding dancers and really knowing themselves, I think, which is the biggest part of movement exploration, especially with young dancers, is that for me personally, in my classroom space, because I teach contemporary and lyrical and jazz in and of itself does lend itself to have been, is a derivative of an improv based art form, tribal dance, communal dance. I make sure that we improv in every class. If it means I have to sacrifice across the floor, I think improv is just as valid of an exercise and a skill to hone in on as the technique that we work on in those across the floor progressions. And so for me, I spend time with my students each class, each week, giving them a, dare I use the word, safe forum to really figure out who they are as movers. And once you know who you are as a mover, it's much easier to figure out who you are as a choreographer. Because one of the things that always used to be said to me by one of my mentors, Sheila Barker, always was saying, find your voice, find your voice. And 8-year-olds have voices, and I teach, up to 72, and 72-year-olds have voices. And so giving every dancer, wherever they happen to be in their training or in their practice or in their process, an opportunity to have discovery in a room where they feel comfortable to have it, I think really puts them on a trajectory for knowing who they are. And if you know who you are, you're much better able to offer, movement that is yours, choreography that is yours, in turn offer others choreography as yourself. Really, the common denominator is knowing yourself.
You feel like you use the same methodology to find a voice for an 8-year-old that you do for a 72-year-old? Is that the same process, or does it differ by age? Are you customizing it based on who you're working with, your process?
That's a really great question. It's very, very similar for an 8-year-old and a 72-year-old. I think the only real difference between those two age bracket of dancer is life experience. And so a 72-year-old might be able to tap in to who they are as a person faster than an 8-year-old does. But on the flip side of that, an 8-year-old is not fearful yet, whereas a 72-year-old, they're so, I have to say, I love their honesty. I think it is so, I'm going to use the word funny because there's other words we probably could use, but like they will just say what they're thinking. And I love that they feel safe with me to say what they're thinking. Again, I think that's a testament to how they feel in a given environment as an 8-year-old. I know there's environments where I'm sure they would not feel as comfortable to just spew out whatever has come through their brain. But an 8-year-old hasn't discovered who they are as a person yet, just by default of the fact that they haven't had as much life experience. And so although similar in process, very similar in process, I don't like the word expectation because I try not to have expectations of my students on either end of that age spectrum, but just opening, a safe facilitation for them to do what they need to do for themselves in their practice on any given day, a 72-year-old has a lot more to draw from right away, whereas an 8-year-old has less fear. And so at the end of the day, they kind of meet each other in the middle with it, because one age bracket has this a little bit more and the other age bracket has this a little bit more. Safety of an 8-year-old, I think, is actually easier to create in a classroom space because they have not spent however many years of their life being told something is either wrong, or it wasn't good, or like, ooh, that wasn't the best choice, you could try again. They've hopefully known, and I say hopefully because there are spaces that have 2-year-olds competing now, and that blows my mind. But like, um hopefully, in my mind, in an ideal realm of training for a young dancer, by the time you're teaching an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old, they have not spent an extensive amount of time in a studio or in their life being told that their choices are wrong. They're being guided, but hopefully in a way that's like, oh, that was great, but maybe you could also try this. Not, that was wrong, do it differently. Whereas, I use my 72-year-old student. I have a couple of students in that age range though. She's a former professional dancer. I am certain in her years of training and then professional dancing and then just adulthood as a dancer who takes class still, I'm certain she has been told at some point in there that she has made a wrong choice, or it was a poor choice, or we didn't like that, try again. She auditioned for things. Like, there are spaces where you get told no frequently, and most 8-year-olds, although probably get told no by their parents, hopefully, for some things. In dance, I hope they haven't heard the word no that often yet, and I hope that they haven't been told that their choices are wrong yet. And some of the greatest creativity comes out of that young age group in improv, because they go from creative movement and then all of a sudden they're in contemporary class and it's called improv, but it is the same thing. Creative movement and improv are the same. And they're given freedom to just twirl around, basically, like twirl around with choice making, twirl around with intention, and be deliberate in what you're doing. And the creativity is off the charts. The fearlessness is incredible. I mean, yeah, and ants in their pants, the energy also, like they're so ready to just go for it. But yeah, circling all the way back, the process is very similar. I give them my same kind of sentiments. I used to call them rules. I don't call them rules anymore because I don't want to put finite constrictions on an improv exercise. I know, in an improv class sometimes those exist, but since it's not improv class per se, start as soon as you hear the music. Try not to overthink, try not to judge yourself and be hypercritical of what you're doing in real time. See what actually happens. And then, if they love their improv, I'm always like, congratulations, I'm glad you loved your improv today. And if they don't love their improv, I'm of the mindset of like, still congratulations, because if you didn't love it, you learned from it today. And sometimes the learning opportunity is actually better than the loving it, because if I learned from it today, I can take that information and put it into next week's class improv or whatever is happening.
It's interesting that you mentioned safety and voice. I think a lot of times, especially with so much focus being on the competitive world these days in the youth dance space, we forsake that freedom to be yourself and explore for the sake of the structure of building technique and teaching choreography. So, how do you, as an educator and choreographer, create a learning environment that encourages that creativity and allows dancers to find their unique voice while still maintaining somewhat of a structure that allows you to deliver the technical piece and the technical lessons, as well as deliver choreography?
Absolutely. For me, I use the example of dance being kind of like a wedding cake, where that first layer is technique. Whatever genre it is, I know there's always the argument of like ballet isn't the foundation of everything, and it's not, but it is the foundation of what I do in my jazz technique and my lyrical and my contemporary. And so I do a very technical warm up that I hope that the dancers can do with joy in their spirit. I will stop my class sometimes if I sense that dancers are approaching the work too stressed in their process, because I think it's a detriment to your ability to grow as quickly as possible. If you can do your work in a more relaxed manner, you get better faster. And everybody wants to get there as quickly as possible. And so that stressed out energy and getting there quicker don't align. And so getting everybody to kind of breathe their way through their technical work, be as efficient and effective as possible as they can be on any given day. I always remind dancers of all ages that their bodies are going to be different every single class, which is something that took me a long time to really appreciate that sentiment of like, what do you mean that worked so well for me 2 days ago and today, like it's not working at all? And driving that point home and working where you're at to your best, whatever that is on that day. And then in translation of getting that technique into the choreography, because it is the base layer of the cake, everything then that gets brought with it to the choreography gets layered on top. So for me, that base layer is technique, and then on top of that would go style. Then on top of that layer would be a layer of intention. Then on top of that layer would be a layer of comprehension. Do you understand why it is you're doing it, how you're doing it, what it is that you're doing, what is it you hope to convey? And I ask those questions to my classroom. Are you paying attention to the music that we're dancing with? I do not believe in dancing to music. I think that turns into a headbutt. Like, your choreography is not to the music, it's with the music. And if you don't know the artist, it's not for the music. I can't dance on the artist's behalf if I don't know them and know what their intention was. That to me feels, this is a big word for it, but it feels unethical, because if I don't know what somebody's intent was, then I can't assume what it was. So I have to take personal interpretation and put that on the table, because I'm listening to what I'm listening to and I'm interpreting it as myself. And I ask the dancers in this space to do that, whether there's lyrics, no lyrics. How does it make you feel? What is it you hope to convey via, I think, movement? I don't think of myself as a storyteller. I think of myself more of an energy sharer or thematics of it. Whether it's a story for you or not, I respect all things. Even in lyrical, I don't think it's necessarily a storyline that you're building. I think it's an intention that you're trying to convey. And so, asking yourself, how does this make me feel? What do I think about it? How does that get conveyed via the vehicle that is movement? Because our movement without intent or style or interpretation, visceral, emotional quotient, it's just steps. And steps in and of themselves, I mean, not everybody can do steps, but most people could do steps. They would be achievable by anyone with the willingness to learn how to do the step. Take technique off the table, but like, you could have anybody anywhere do step battement. And if they are genetically predisposed to long hamstrings, they will have a step high battement. But did it convey something via it? Probably not. Whereas a dancer who is in tune with themselves and really listening to what they're dancing with, taking the movement to heart, giving it, the intent and the style and the why and the how and the what am I trying to convey, now all of a sudden you don't just have a kid going on stage executing a solo or executing group work. You have a kid going on stage offering artistry, knowing what they hope to give via their dancing. Because dancing is an art form. Dancing is not an execution.
Yeah, so that's a really great segue, right? So we're talking about creating the environment and creating this space where they can learn to find their authentic voice through their movement, right? But let's switch gears to, let's put technique back on the table, right? Because there is a balance between striking, rigorous technical training versus fostering that authentic expression. So, how do you balance the two in your classroom? Because I'm hearing you say you create this wonderful environment. So, then where does the technique layer on top of that? Because you also produce a very technical, you're one of the most technically aware educators that I've seen. You really put a lot of thought into it, the mechanics, how you break that down, how you achieve that. How do you do that and still keep this environment where they can find their authentic selves?
I hate to use the word safety again, but safety in the environment. I am not, I remember this story because my mother is not a dancer. She took ballet when she was like 3 years old, and the teacher had a stick, and then she never went back because she didn't feel safe. How you get great technicians, as far as I am concerned, dancers who are willing to do that work, you create an environment where, number one, they feel safe to be a mess. because the way you get great technique is a willingness to be a mess on your way to great technique. Great technique does not haphazardly happen. Great technique is dedication to your craft day in, day out, a willingness, an eagerness. I still do my tendus every day. I joke, people are always like, yoga every darn day, or they don't say darn, but like yoga every darn day, tendus every darn day, plies every darn day. And I am fortunate that I work with kids who are hungry to be great at their craft. But I also feel very fortunate that I have kind of figured out a happy balance in my classroom space where I don't want to say that I motivate them. I think the kids are self motivated, 9 out of 10 of them, but they know that I want them to be exceptional. We're not even aiming for excellent, we're aiming for exceptional. And exceptional artists are technicians who understand how to offer authentically via their technical ability. How do you get that in an environment? Safety number one. Do the kids feel safe to be sloppy? Do they feel safe to make the correction? Do they feel safe for the teacher to offer them what's on their mind? I don't want to say I'm brutally honest because I'm not brutal with my kids. I am very, very honest with them though. So I tell them as I see. So if they're over rotated, but the leg is going higher, we have a cute little dialogue about, but what if we brought it back into alignment and we felt the structural integrity of where it needs to be? And then we worked on height, because the difference between what you just did, where you're completely out of alignment and you're at risk of hurting your hip and your lower back, if we brought the leg into correct alignment for your body, number one, we close the door to injury, which is very important to me. I want these dancers, whatever age they are, to be able to dance for as long as they hope to. Thank you. And then, is it a half an inch higher because you're malaligned? And I am open about this. A half an inch, nobody cares. Nobody cares about the difference of that half inch. If we're talking that it's a 6 to 10 inch difference, okay, let's bring your leg back into alignment and let's work on exercises that allow you to get your leg back up to the height that it is when you're malaligned. And, also support from the educator. I will cheerlead every dancer in my classroom until I am metaphorically pom-pommed out. Like, I don't care if it takes one class or a year of classes or 10 years of classes. You have a goal, and it is the dancer. The dancer, again, has to be motivated in some way. I don't think you can get a dancer who's blasé about their technique necessarily to care about it unless you show them a reason why they should care about their technique. For me, it's usually injury prevention that will get a dancer on board. That's going to hurt your knee. It might not hurt today, but give it 2 years. Do you want to dance for the next 10? Do you want to dance for the next 2? And usually they're like, no, I wanted it. And I'm like, okay, well then we need to, correct this. I don't like the word fix.
Presenting very clear, two very clear paths and choose one, is actually, it's really smart. And understanding that, um, that the process could be different for every person that walks through your room, and you take a different amount of time. And I think that's some of the thing that I think is missing in youth sports in general, is just teaching kids and parents that that process looks drastically different. Just because a kid might be excelling at 12 years old doesn't mean your kid's going to excel at 12 years old. But give him or her 2 years, and oh my gosh, like that gap closes tremendously. So it really is dependent on the person, right? And their individual process.
1,000% dependent on the person, their individual process, their facility. I'll use myself as the example because I was held back a year from all of my friends got put on Pointe, and I got put in an extra ballet class on flat because I have strong but wobbly ankles. And my ballet teacher looked at me, I think I was 12 when this happened, 11 or 12 when this happened. And I remember being like, oh, I'm being held back. But then I realized, like, I'm not being held back. I'm being propelled forward. If they put me in Pointe shoes this year, I'm going to break my ankle. Like, I don't have, although my ankles are strong, I started out as a tap dance. Well, I did everything, but I thought I was going to be a tap dancer. Falling into contemporary and jazz and lyrical was an act of love once I started coming to New York. But when I was training in Florida, I was a tapper, and my ankles are loose and they weren't strong enough for Pointe successfully. And I think, perspective shifting. It's more the parents than the kids. And I say that, and I'm knocking on wood at my desk as I say this, and I'm very fortunate that I have dance parents in general that I work with who are very understanding and trusting of myself and my colleagues that I work with, that their children, they know their children are in good hands, that want the best for them and want them to achieve their goals. And so they kind of go, okay, if that's what you think, like, we're going to trust you in that. But I know not everybody has that fortune with their parents. And, you know, parents, if you're listening to this, in addition to teachers and students, like, please listen to the teacher because they want what's best for your kid. And your kid's facility is different than any other child in that building. I say this to every class, although not as much with my youngers because it's a little bit more of, I think, a mature headspace to be in. But like, just because our bodies are the same do not mean they are identical. My structure might be similar to a dancer standing next to me in the classroom, but that doesn't mean that our spine is the same. Our pelvic structure is not the same. So the 12-year-old in your child's class who is thriving in this one way and your child hasn't gotten there yet, there's so many factors that get thrown into that mixing bowl to make sure that, okay, well, your kid's not thriving yet at 12, but that doesn't mean, they hit puberty and all of a sudden their structure has changed and now they are thriving in this way. Or they have a new teacher next year and all of a sudden they say something in a way that just light bulb goes off and it clicks. And now your child is so engaged by the work that they're doing. There's just a million different factors and a
Yeah, it's interesting because I used to be on I agree with everything you're saying, to be clear, but I used to be on the side of like parents just need to trust the director, the educator, all of the things. But I also there the caveat there, I think there's this tendency to hold parents at arm's length in this industry in general. There's this attitude that the parents need to stay away. And as I've always been one to want to pull them in, but as I've gotten into youth sports with my own kids, I think trust is earned. When we're speaking this idea of trust, on the you absolutely have to trust the educator, but there are so many scenarios where the educator has not earned that trust, whether it be through consistency or knowledge or any number of reasons, all of the above. I think that you have to develop that trust with the educator. It also has to be earned and proven and shown, like, look, I am consistent, I know what I'm talking about, I care, and you do that so well. And I think that's something that a lot of educators need to step back and take themselves on off autopilot sometimes, because I do think we go on autopilot in this industry a lot, just because the industry, we're always trying to stay 10 steps ahead of what comes next, right? That things get lost, the details get left behind sometimes. So I do want to say that to the parents out there too, like, yes, trust your educator, but make sure that they have earned that trust first.
absolutely. And forgive me, parents out there, and also because I should say, I do presume that I have to earn the trust, not only of the parents, but also of my students. My kids that I teach, I teach open classes at BDC and Steps, but my kids who are my kids at Steps Academy, on the first day of the semester, before we ever move, I do a kind of get to know you exercise with them. And I lay, my classroom ground rules, but my classroom ground rules are a two-way street. And we have a dialogue about, again, I don't like that word expectation and I try to avoid it, but I say, my expectations of this classroom are that I'm going to respect you and you're going to respect me. There are things that I offer to them that even some of my colleagues here don't offer to them. I'm big on, they're old enough to have some forms of autonomy. I don't request that they ask me to go to the restroom anymore. They kind of do one of these and make eye contact with me, and they know that they're allowed to go. If they need a sip of water, they don't have to ask me. They know that they're allowed to go to the side and have a sip of water. There are some things that I keep as guidelines in my classroom because even as an 8-year-old who is my youngest, they know what their needs are. And so from my perspective, I think it's very audacious to be like, you're 8 years old and you know that you need to use the restroom. You must ask me to use the restroom. No. If you need assistance, they know we have an open policy of like, if you're not feeling well, if you're injured, if you need me, if you're concerned about something, if there's an emergency, that you need my attention for. Absolutely. But things that you don't need my attention for, that you are capable of doing on your own. And so I think that element of trust between myself and my students, we set that precedent on the first day of class of like, these are the ways that I show you trust. The ways that you're going to show me trust is what I'm going to offer you. And then I do have an open policy. You know, if a parent ever has a need, they are required to go through the office at Steps Academy, which I appreciate and I respect, because I think if a parent wants to have a meeting, there should always be a third party there who's hearing what's going on. But yeah, absolutely. Trust is earned. I don't expect my students to just walk in the door and trust me until they know me. There has to be an understanding of who am I in the room with and what are their intentions for me. You know, and we do goal sheets on the first day as well. And that's actually one of my favorite parts of the year, because I read through all of them and I save them, and then I'm able to be like, okay, this is, you know, and I think that also builds trust, because when you recognize that your teacher, we do, you know, short-term goals, goals for the whole year, 5-year goals, 10-year goals, like lifetime goals, with the understanding that they can change. When you know that your teacher is invested for the long haul, it's easier, I think, to build that rapport of trust also. But yeah, trust is earned. Absolutely. There is no place in dance where I believe a teacher should be handed blind trust when children are in a room, ever.
So I want to kind of go in a little bit different direction, because there are so many people out there who want to be like you, Emily. They want to be choreographers. They want to get into this space, but people don't know. Of course, having dance training and some background, want to know where to start. So, I really want to focus in on what is your first step in the choreographic process. What do you consider to be that very first step?
Step one for me is going into a studio and technically improving, but I call it wiggling around. And wiggling around, and I do set up my camera and kind of play it back and see what I like and see what I didn't necessarily care for. Step one prior to, so like step zero for me though would be having something happen in my life that inspires me to want to create something. My work is very emotionally, I'm a Scorpio, I'm an emotional person. Like my work is very emotionally driven and charged. And so that would be like step zero. Do I feel motivated to do it? I'm not an advocate of like just go do it haphazardly. You would get a different answer from some of my friends and colleagues who are like, no, you just have to keep making stuff. And I'm like, I don't think you do. I don't think you do have to make things when you're not inspired to do so, unless you're in school and you have a project due and you have to figure it out and make it happen. But if you're wanting to do choreography or you're wanting to get started, I think being inspired to do something, and then step one, like action step one, go to the studio, wiggle it out, see what you like.
I'm so curious, is it the concept that comes first for you, or is it the music? Like, do you have a song that triggers something in you and then you create the movement to the song, or is it a general feeling and a concept in your head and then you find a music to match that?
It works both ways for me, actually. Sometimes I'll have an idea in my head and then I have to go digging for music that fits what the idea was or that feels correct to what I'm hoping for the aesthetic and the vibe and the energy to be. And then other times I'll hear a piece of music and I'll be like, oh, I have to dance to that. Like I have, or not to, with that, I have to utilize that piece of music. Usually that will happen more for when I'm going into creation mode for class, and less for when I'm going into creation mode for my company, for my concert work. Usually my concert work is I have an idea based upon something I'm feeling, and then I have to go digging for music that fits it correctly. But for class also for me, because technically right now my classes are labeled at Steps, they're labeled as jazz, at BDC they're labeled as lyrical. Labels are BS, but that is what they're technically labeled. So for lyrical class, it gives me a lot of freedom to just be like, I really love that song. Like, I want to dance to that song or dance with that song. And so for that purpose, yeah, often. And I will scan YouTube for new artists and then go find and buy their music, because I like supporting, not that established artists aren't wonderful. Please, like it's not a secret. I love Adele and I love Celine Dion. Like, hit me with your cheesiest, most dramatic lyrical song, and I've probably already used it in multiples, probably. But sometimes I will. I'll go digging and just spend hours on YouTube and find new artists and just be like, wow, I want to dance with this. This is so, and I'll want to move because of something I've heard. So yeah, both sides of that coin.
Yeah, I'm a music first person. I cannot. I have to have the music.
Same, same. It has to speak to me. If I do not feel the music, forget it. Forget it.
Yeah, and I've, like, been given us, had worked with people before, and they're like, "I really wanna dance with this piece," and I'm like, "I am not feeling that at all, like, I can't do anything with this."
In fairness, Melissa, I do commiserate with that though, because although I'm able to sometimes figure out what I want it to be without the music first, I had a beautiful dancer. So this was not about the dancer. If she hears this, she's probably going to be like, that's about me. And I love you, dear dancer, that this is about. But sent me music for a solo and just kept sending songs that I was like, I don't connect to this. I don't connect to this. I don't feel like I kept being like, it's like that song where she's like, I feel nothing. And I was like, I really don't want to create a solo for you based upon feeling nothing. And we finally did find a piece of music. Our tastes were just different, like movement wise, our tastes were very similar, but music wise, our tastes were very different. And so we did finally find a happy balance of something where I was like, okay, I feel like I can choreograph for you to that piece because we've found something that at least like has struck my spirit even mildly. And so I can, I can get started for you there. But I was like, oh my goodness, like this is not working. This song does not make me want to get out of my chair and move even a little.
It's so fun to hear the differences in people's processes and how they approach the work. And I've always been so curious about that with you because you have such a long career and you do this in so many different facets. From teaching all over the world to the most renowned studios in ever, and then the pieces that you set and the voice that you have. So it's so interesting to hear how you approach all of it, and thank you for sharing that with us. You've been here before, so you know that we like to give homework to everybody out there watching. So for dance educators looking to ignite more creativity in their students and aspiring choreographers seeking to develop their craft and their voice, what is one piece of advice or practical exercise you would recommend they explore?
Absolutely. And actually, I'm adding a clause to the homework from this episode, if that's okay. I would love for people to tag Apala and the podcast and me. I would love to see them if you do the homework. Please find a piece of music that you love, dissect it, listen to it, let it really strike your spirit, figure out what it means to you when you listen to it. Like, dive into it in such a way that it is a visceral reaction. How do you feel? What do you think? There is no right, there is no wrong. There is only personal interpretation and personal intent. And then take that into the studio with you and move. And let's see what you actually create. And you can do it yourself if you're a teacher hearing this. You can use this. I use this exercise with my kids. I will ask them, close your eyes, open your ears, listen. Don't move. Don't think about movement. Don't mark movement. Just really digest and figure out for yourself what it is that you take away from the piece of music that you've chosen. And then let's see what, if you really can light your spirit up, what your actual voice is if you are truly lit up by what you're about to dance with.
So you have homework, and it's twofold homework because you need to tag Apollo Performance, TP Dance Creations, tag so Emily can see. Tag Emily, tag everyone. E Bufford is Instagram, Emily Bufford on Facebook, young choreographers on TikTok, you name it. Tag somebody because we want to see what you're doing out there to with this homework. We also want you to take the Steps Initiative, which was the impetus for this whole entire podcast. It's a free collection of modules that teach you about everything from racism to nutrition, psychology, of course, medicine and science, all of the things, and it's totally free. So please make sure that you take that and have your friends take it as well because it is a free resource. And when you know better, you do better. I want to make sure that everyone has Emily's website. Emily, what's your website?
My website is emilybufford.com. Very easy. No hearts, no stars, no dots, no dashes.
And how can people get in touch with you on social media? I think I just ran off a bunch of your social media handles, but you can probably do it.
I know, and I'm always so honored to be here. And I just would love to piggyback most off of what you said. Not only please tag us so we can see them, but also we want to celebrate them. Like, I think when you get yourself moving in a way that is truly authentic to your own voice and is celebratory yourself, like, it's so exciting to see that work and it proliferates itself. Like, it'll inspire the people who get to see it. So please allow us to celebrate whatever you create. But you can find me on social media. My personal Instagram is ebufford, EBUFFERD. You can find Young Choreographers Festival at YCF Dance. You can find me on Facebook, just my name, Emily Bufford, and my TikTok is not so great. So don't worry about TikTok. My millennial just really shows itself on TikTok. I don't really understand how to use it that well, and I don't feel married to it. So let's gather each other together on Instagram or Facebook.
Oh my gosh, you're so awesome. For those out there, I'm Bree Zabrowski with Melissa McDaniel Grisham. Thank you to our beautiful friend and dance educator extraordinaire, Miss Emily Bufford, for the great convo and all the insight. Make sure to follow what she is doing through all the channels we just mentioned. And thank you all out there for joining us for another episode of Beyond the Steps. You can find this episode and all of our episodes on YouTube and Facebook at Apollo Performance and TP Dance Creations. So be sure to subscribe, like, comment, and share all the things. Next week, we are back with mindset skills educator Ashley Mowry.